Hello, this is Steve introducing Unity Dashboard. Unity Dashboard is a business intelligence tool where a customer can visualize statistics on what's happening, particularly in a call center environment. So we have a number of Q and ACD stats, but also just in a hosted PBX environment. There's two types of orientation or layouts that you can have for the dashboard product. One of those is Tabular, which we're going to look at. That's often quite good for showing sort of detailed statistics if you wanted to drill in. And also we have graphical formats, which is the focus of this presentation today. We have a number of badges and dials and gauges and everything else. With that, let's jump in and have a look at it. So here we are. So firstly, the best place to start really is just this dashboard view here. So this is actually what the customer would see, and if I could actually make it full size and it would hide these menus here, but just to sort of, as a start point, just to scroll through some of the options that are available. What I'm looking at here is one of the tabular views, so as you can see it's got some statistics. On this particular example, I've configured this to see outbound stats. So if this was a sales team, I can see how many calls they've made, how long the duration since they last made an outbound call. There's a number of sort of outbound performance metrics I can put up here. So typically for a telesales environment. Stepping in to look at the graphical options, as you can see, there's actually automatically scrolling here. So I've set these up that I've got, these are views, so these are like slides that you can have scrolling if you have more than one. At the moment I've set up 8 or 9 of them, and I have these scrolling on a 30-second timer. So just while these things work through, let's just have a look at some of the graphical elements. At the top here we've got what we call a half gauge for the staff ratio and agents awaiting call. This is important in as much as it's not a single, sometimes single statistics, they lose meaning because there's no context. Let me just right click here and roll back a second to go to that one we were just looking at. So this has just changed. The important thing that I'm seeing here is that I have 5 agents that are available awaiting call. So that means that they're joined to the queues, they're in available ACD state, and they're on hook. So they're not off hooks, they're literally waiting for somebody to ring, and it's going to get delivered into those agents. And that's out of a total of 22 agents that I've got, as you can see here. So moving on to the next one, there's a number of ways we can configure different views. I'm going to go through this very quickly, and then we'll show you how you can build actually some of these views that I've got configured here, how you can configure what statistics are displayed and which call centers we're showing the information on. This here is a bar chart, and it's simply showing, in this very simple configuration, it's showing inbound calls, percentage, how many answered and how many have been missed. Of course, missed calls means a number of things. It means that they've been transferred, etc., from the queue. They've abandoned, of course. They've overflowed. We can break down detail in exactly what missed calls are, and some of the other pie charts and stuff we're going to look at. These here are badges, and I've got a 4x4 orientation set up here. There is, like I mentioned, there's 83 statistics. You can really put up anything you'd like. And you can also configure them for individual queues. So for example, I have inbound calls here. I might want to make this inbound calls sales, inbound calls operations, and then inbound calls engineering. So I can configure all of the stats for also individual queues or groups of queues. Badges in this example, there's 2 types of badges. One of them is a statistic like answered calls, and another one is the percentage option, which as you can see is displayed on the top row. These colours that are snaking around, all of the colours that you're seeing for the percentages and the badges and also the tiles on the previous view, the colours are basically based on thresholds. I'm going to show you how you can configure all these thresholds. Thresholds also apply for these full gauges that we have here. So I'm showing basically answered calls percentage is about 43%. You'll see that the first breakpoint here is 30%. These are configurable in settings where we can set up all these display templates. So we're going to jump into that in just a second, and let's just jump into a couple more pie charts. So if we look at this example here, we were looking at the missed calls before, or that is to say we were looking at inbound calls, answered calls versus missed calls. Here I can drill into exactly what those missed calls are. As you can see, and we're not actually having a lot of calls here. There's one that's been transferred out of the queue by the supervisor. But other than that, they've all been abandoned, basically, so the people have hung up. So we haven't had any escape calls, which is pressing 0 to escape or overflowed or anything like that. A couple of things we've already looked at, which is the percentage bar charts and things. This bar and line chart, there's a couple of ways we can use this within the dashboard application. I think the important thing here is that we can show two different statistics, so we're able to provide, like I say, more intelligence because there's context for the statistic. So we can look at inbound calls and answered calls, but we could also look at, for example, abandoned calls versus average abandon time. Okay. We're going to come on to that particular point in more detail soon. Another representation of some graphical elements we've already looked at, so let's just move on, and I think that's almost going to wrap up the sort of introductory sort of step through. Okay. Yeah, more badges and more gauges, and then the last one, again, some statistics we've already looked at, represented in a different way. Okay, so as you can see, I've just scrolled through a number of statistics here. I think in the use case of a customer, you're probably not going to have that many. You know, you're going to want to scroll through 3 or 4, but again, it's up to the customer. When we're looking at the white space here and the sizing, all the font size, all of that kind of stuff is configurable and adjustable. I'm not going to cover any of that on this kind of call. What I am going to show is how you can configure this. So if I go into display template, this is where I can choose which statistics I want to see. So what I've got is graphical templates, and I have tabular templates. So graphical we're going to focus on. Let's create a new one. Actually, let's create a new graphical one. So I'm going to use this display layout 1. So there's a number of canned layouts that have different graphical elements. Let's just use this one for argument's sake. Let's just call this DT1 test, so I know what I'm doing. You can choose to have, when you actually do make the view, you can choose to have the name at the top of the display. So, of course, you would make it more meaningful to the customer. You know, operations queues, sales queues, all that kind of stuff. Let's just jump in here at the moment. So a data source is where I can basically configure which call centers I want to get some statistics on. So let's just choose all of them for the minute just to get this started. So here I am. I'm basically ready to go with just some of the default variables that are configured here. But just to show you what I could be doing here, if I right-click, I can configure this particular tile, and I'm going to call it ops calls. Okay. So here is where I can choose the statistics. I'm going to choose this for answered calls for ops, the operations team. And I'm going to start that. There's some default colors here. These are the default thresholds, that is. So it's going to change color when it hits or exceeds these values here. The icon is optional. You can choose to have a happy face, for example, if the sales have been really good or whatever the case may be. So if I just OK that, you'll see that straight away it's got ops calls. And it has a smiley face. So if I just OK that, I'm not going to go into this in more detail. I'm going to configure some of the live display templates that I've already got set up. So if I just go OK on that, I've now saved that display template. So just to recap, that just means that it's a group of statistics. So these are all my display templates that I've created. To actually render the information live and to see it on the screen, I need to create a view. So if I just jump into view here, again, I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call it display template 1 test, just so that it dovetails with the naming conventions, so we don't get confused what we're doing. It's a graphical. There it is there. It's display template 1 test, which we just configured. And I'm going to set again for 30 seconds, so it's going to scroll round if there's more than one view created, which there is, because in the left-hand panel you'll see that there's 10 or so. So we're going to go OK. Save successfully. That's good news. So if I go into dashboard, now this is where we're going to see it displayed. Again, if I click the maximize button, it will go full screen. But if I just right click here and go down to display template 1, this is the view that we've just configured. Okay, so I've got ops calls, answered calls, etc. If I now go back into this display template, I've got let's just change a couple of things real time so you can see how this works. If I go back into display template, Okay, go into this one here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another tile in, and I want to configure that tile, and I'm going to make it longest wait time. I'm going to use all of the call centers, so I could have this longest wait time for the sales queues versus the engineering queues, as I mentioned. Let's just call it longest wait. So that's going to be the name of the badge, and I'm not going to configure any colors on this one, so it's going to stay grey. Okay, so there's no colors. Now I OK that. Back to dashboard, and if I just choose that one straight away, you'll see that we've made a change in real time. So anything that you want to change, it's very configurable for the customer to sort of add and drop some of these elements in. If I now go in and change some of the badges we have, so let's have a look at the badges. Let's just play around with this for a second to see how this can behave. So let's have a look at answered calls percentage. So I can add badges, as you can see, but let's just configure this. So I can change what is answered calls percentage at the moment? Sorry, it's 42%. So let's just change that. So anything up to 40%. 40% is green, and anything 41 to 100. Oops, 41 to 100 is going to be mustard. Okay, that. And if we go back to dashboard, yeah, you are. So it's very straightforward. It's hit the second threshold, and therefore it's changed. So I think the key takeaway is that we're able to show a lot of information for the customer, and it's a highly configurable interface, and it's absolutely everything is in real time. Let's just have a look at some of those bar and line charts we just looked at a moment ago. So if we go back to display template, if I choose, for example, 11. So I've got a couple of options here. I've got this bar and line chart here. There's a couple of things that I can mention here. Firstly is the interval. This is how quickly the information is refreshed, basically. So what you're seeing is it's set to 15 minutes in this example. So I can see that, as you can see, there's a bar and line. It's accumulating every 15 minutes. So that gives me sort of a quite granular historical view for the day of what's happened in the last sort of few hours. You can, of course, stretch that out to make it hourly, and then it's going to show, it's going to show a longer period of time. If I go into configure these, this is where I can choose with the bar and line chart, and I think this is important that the customer can see how different stats play off against each other. So in this example, I can have abandoned calls, and I can also have that against sort of current speed of answer, which is the time in queue versus the time ringing on the agent. But I could also have average abandon time. So let me just do that. Average abandon time, 15 minutes. And then now, update that. Now if we go back to view 11, we don't need to change anything else because the view has already got the display template, which specifies which statistics are displayed as one of its parameters. So once I've changed the underlying display template, as you can see, I can immediately see how those statistics play out based on what's been currently happening for the day over these intervals that I've been reporting on. Not a lot of traffic coming in, so there's not a lot of abandoned calls. Big peak here at lunchtime. See, everybody's gone to lunch, it looks like, and there's been 10 abandoned calls. That, in essence, is what we have with the dashboard, highlighting particularly the graphical elements. Appreciate your time, and please reach out to us offline and we can pick this up. Thanks. Bye-bye.